right, thanks everyone for joining. Today's speaker is Luke. Let's give him a round of applause.
Can everyone hear me? Yes. All right. So welcome everyone. My name is Luke. I will give you a quick rundown about who I am and where I'm from, and then we'll jump straight into it. A little bit of a history of my work life. Started in Japan as a children's teacher. Somehow ended up working for ANZ Bank for almost 20 years. Then I did a bit of consulting at Elaborate. Was a member of a little group called Design Thinking Games. So teaching people design thinking and human-centered design using games. And most recently, I've been lucky enough to work with the authors of Team Topologies. If you haven't read or heard of the book, I would recommend you check it out. I'm also been doing a little bit of work with the guys from Unbundling the Enterprise, another fantastic book. I'd highly recommend you check it out. It's all about APIs, optionality, and there's a little bit of science behind companies like Amazon, Twilio, and some of these other successful companies. And it talks all about how they uncover new opportunities and capitalize on them. So we're here to talk about value. Value is a bit of a complicated, twisted beast of a thing. It's often invisible. It moves in all sorts of different directions. Sometimes it's co-created between two different parties, for example. And it's also impacted by all sorts of different biases, behavioral economics, and all sorts of other wonderful things. So, given value is such a hard thing to define, how do you know if your teams are building features or actually creating value or not? These are our typical views of business. Our financial charts, our JIRA burn down charts, velocity, what else have we got? Org charts, quarterly reports. Most of them are focused on financials though. They don't really show whether or not we're actually making a difference in terms of value. I probably don't need to go on a huge amount of this stuff. You guys probably know all of this given that you're in the world of UX, but experience debt is very similar to technical debt. So it builds up and basically makes it hard for your business to innovate, to move, to respond to threats and other things. And it's a no-brainer why we invest in UX, right? It's a 10,000% return on investment. So every $1 spent on a good UX potentially returns $100. And the part that I'm really interested in, if teams don't have direction or purpose, it actually it impacts their well-being and it impacts team performance. So it's pretty important stuff. This is a little bit of a soapbox from me. I truly believe that all teams should have customers. Otherwise, I'm not sure why the teams exist. So all of these X's are customers. We've got customer experience, user experience, DevX, employee X. They're all customers. So UX is a really important skill or capability for teams to have. I also believe in long-lived products with long-lived customers worked on and serviced by long-lived teams and not projects. So what else? And close customer connection, understanding what their changes are doing with direct operational feedback. So if you're only looking at the financials as a measurement or as a currency, you're kind of looking at the final score of the game. It tells you the final result, but it doesn't actually tell you much about how you got there. So they're a great lag indicator of yesterday, not a roadmap for tomorrow. So we need a new lens to understand what's going on in our digital business ecosystems. And that's where value dynamics comes in. So it's a framework for understanding and visualizing the flows of value between different players inside of complex digital ecosystems. So let me show you a bit more. It's kind of like an X-ray for your business. It's like a compass showing you where to sail or where to scratch or where to invest next. Once you've mapped out your business ecosystem, it can act as a bit of a game board. You can run experiments and ask all sorts of cool questions based on what your ecosystem looks like. Turn a messy interconnected web into a clear map that everyone can see. Everyone's on the same page, on the same map. And yeah, then you can actually start to think about things like shared KPIs and a connected strategy and things like that that might actually work. So I'll give you a quick overview of where value dynamics comes from. Another great book, if you haven't read it, The Build Trap by Melissa Perry. This is a really simple value exchange. We've got a customer and an organization. We've got money going one way, and we've got products and services going the other way. I read this book and this white paper. Inside them is a description of value dynamics and a few examples. I was so blown away by it. I kind of took it and created a canvas and a website and a whole lot of other stuff. And I've started working with the authors just for a bit of fun, something to do in my spare time. So as you can see, this is actually an analog business. It's a newspaper. Once we start to introduce the concept of bidirectional value flow, so what I give and what I get is very different to what you give and what you get, which is very different to what another player or another party values or gives and gets, for example. So as you can see here, readers pay money to the newspaper. They get the newspaper back as content. The newspaper gives products exposure. They pay money to advertise. Journalists give the newspaper content in the form of articles, and then the newspaper pays them in money, but the other currency that they get is exposure. All right, so enter Facebook. Facebook's a little bit more not complicated, but savvy in terms of how they target exposure. Same sort of deal, advertising money. Now, the interesting thing here is that as users, we're constantly giving Facebook our data and our content for free. They give us reach, so all of the different users that we can access, and I think we pay money in fees for them as well. So that's a simple ecosystem with 3 players. Not many businesses are that simple. In fact, most businesses are complicated, living, breathing ecosystems rather than like a linear value chain. So I'm going to show you a couple of maps in a second, but I'll quickly go through some vocabulary that's important. Value dynamics is about what value is and how it flows. The value network is basically a circle around the ecosystem that we're going to map. Constituents are all of the different players. So don't just think of customers and the company. We've got intermediaries, we've got suppliers, we've got regulators, for example. And the anchor in the middle of the map, which I'll show you in a second, is basically the primary focus of our mapping exercise. So it could be a product, it could be your company, it can be a service, for example. All right, this is the cool stuff. So value currencies, all of the different intangible and tangible value that's exchanged between those players that we just talked about. And these are the 8 value currencies from the book. I'm going to show you some different ones in a minute that I've started to play with and experiment with. I suppose the first 4 are the most visible. We probably see them all the time. But then we start to look at things like data, reach. So reach is when one party provides access to another party, like a group of customers or a data set, for example. What else have we got? We've got time savings and risk reduction, which are both intangible value currencies from a customer perspective and also from a business perspective. And the reason I've circled data is data tends to be one of the most powerful currencies in this set of currencies because it's non-rivalrous, which means that I can use it, you can use it, they can use it over there, and it doesn't get depleted. These are some of the mechanisms on how UX helps to deliver against each of these currencies. But I suppose the big message here is that I feel like UX is the primary mechanism which most of these intangible currencies are actually delivered, perceived, exchanged, and amplified, or I suppose eroded and destroyed in digital ecosystems. All right. And the final thing I want to talk about is a value exchange. And as we saw before, they are intentionally bidirectional so that we can show on each different line who is passing which currency in which direction, for example. And then, yeah, value's created, it's delivered, it's captured, it's consumed, and it's received. So that's why we also have the bidirectional arrows. Here is an example value dynamics map that I've used AI to create. I might go to the next slide because it's a little bit bigger. So hopefully everyone knows Movember. We started off as a men's charity, but we've got Mo Bros and Mo Sisters apparently as customers. And as you can see, their business ecosystem, I actually didn't know much about Movember until I did this little AI project, but they have lots of different constituents in their ecosystem. And as you can also see, on each of the different sides of the line, there's different currencies moving in each of the different directions. I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically it's a pretty simple exercise to create a map. We define the anchor in the middle of the map. We work out who all the players are on the board. We work out which currencies each player values and exchanges and in which direction they're exchanged. And then it's all about analysing and strategizing. The other thing I always recommend when creating these maps is to use a blend of data and stories. So you might have things like operational metrics saying that a delivery was delivered on time. But then if you go and look at a customer's story, it says, yeah, I got the item on time, but it took me 3.5 weeks to deliver it, and it was an absolute nightmare. So data and stories, so that the stories really help to shape the data. So from the book, the original use case for value dynamics was to actually work out along each of these different lines, what are the business capabilities that drive these value exchanges? So business capabilities being things like customer identification, account opening, document storage. Then we also, in the book, it also talks about APIs. So APIs being the way of accessing those different capabilities. So using APIs and business capabilities, straight out of the book, the 6 use cases are around doing a business model health check on your current business model today. testing and investigating some new business models, finding new value channels. So looking at how you can potentially open up different currencies to different constituents across different exchanges, augmenting value exchanges. So again, this is without disrupting anything at all. You've got an existing relationship with a constituent. Could you enhance that relationship by adding data, by adding reach, by adding trust, by adding time savings, for example? Really good for when you've got a big network of different vendors and a supply chain, so it helps supply chain optimization. And then the really big one for me is the connection of value networks. So those business capabilities I talked about before are like account opening, document storage, and let's say customer ID. If you work in a big bank or a big insurer or a big anywhere, what's the bet that you have customer ID built into this monolith over here for these customers? You've got customer ID built into this monolith over here for this set of customers, and then customer ID built into this monolith over here for this set of customers. So the exciting thing for me is looking at business capabilities, how we can expose them via APIs, and then share them across different parts of our business. And then I suppose you guys know what to do with a game board. So once we've got all the constituents, all the players, all the currencies, I think that's, for me, this is where the fun begins, right? This is where the experiments start. What would happen if we got rid of one of these constituents on board? What would happen if we added data to this exchange? Could we enhance this exchange? How might we save time for our Mo bros and sisters, for example? How can we provide better content to our healthcare organisations, for example? How can we provide better access or reach? So yeah, that's where the fun begins for me. Now, this is a little bit experimental, so I've kind of just started to play with this this way of doing mapping, but you guys are some of the first people to see it. So hands up who's heard of Bain's Elements of Value? A couple of people. Bain & Co, yeah. So Bain & Co has this cool framework. It's called the Elements of Value. There's 30 elements for business to consumer and 40 for business to business. It's basically the way that value is perceived through the eyes of the customer. Let me just get to where I'm at in my notes. And here are the two tables. They're a little bit hard to read, so I might go to the next slide. Oh. Actually, I don't have a bigger one of that, but you can get these off Google. This is basically what value does. So through the eyes of the customer, we've got things like reducing effort, saving time, simplifies, organizes, connects, integrates, attractiveness, provides better access, for example. And similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the reason it's built in a pyramid is because there's actually a relationship between how a company can provide these value elements, and they kind of have to earn their right to get to the top of the pyramid. So for example, you've got things like ethical standards, compliance, and quality. You don't get any extra points for having those value currencies in your ecosystem. Those are basically the cost of doing business, right? Customers won't even think about some of the other elements, so the emotional elements or the life-changing elements, if you're not delivering on some of these basic human needs at the bottom. So if we take these 30 elements and 40 elements and put them into a map, this is what happens. So through the eyes of each of those different consumers, you've got dotted lines, I think, for business to business. Yep, and then solid lines for business to consumer. But this is where you can jump straight in and start running some of these experiments. So how might we save more time for our Mo bros and sisters? How could we enhance revenue for our media or influencers? What would happen if the research institutions weren't part of the picture, for example? You know, you can start doing like war games and all sorts of cool things with this map. And yeah, every single decision we make as UXers can either destroy or amplify this value. So this is something else I've done using ChatGPT, or Claude maybe, I can't remember. But I've taken the elements of value and kind of turned them into, what are these guys? They're basically the scientific elements. And what I realized was that for each of the elements of value, you can actually flip them on their head. So saves time becomes waste time, simplifies becomes complicates, makes money becomes loses money, for example. So by understanding these currencies, you can actually listen into what your customers feel and what they value. Now, I haven't actually had time to finish this part of the presentation yet because I was up until about 10:30 last night. But this is a work in progress. So that's what value does. It's, for example, it saves you time, or it gives you flexibility, or provides you with expertise, for example. And then we've got one final thing I wanted to look at, which is Schwartz's theory of basic human values. So these are the kind of the whys behind each of those values. So at the moment, I'm looking at turning these guys, or mapping each of these guys to some of the Bain's value elements, and then potentially visualizing them on a value dynamics map as well. So now that you can potentially see all of these different flows of value in your ecosystem, which currency, constituent, or exchange would you focus on first? I'll share some links and stuff later, or connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to grab a copy of it. But this is the canvas that I created. I love canvases, as everyone probably in the room does. So I thought this is a great method. I started Googling it after I read the book. There wasn't a canvas, there wasn't a Miro template, so I thought, why not? Let's create one. So there's also one in Miro. You can grab a copy of it right now. I'm uploading a new version in the next couple of days. So you can grab it and start using it straight away. The only little tip that I've got is, when things get really complicated, don't even bother trying to draw it in Miro. Get Claude or Gemini to try and do it. If you're a good prompter, they're much better drawers than I am anyway, for example. So, and then, yeah, I just want to say thank you for coming to my talk. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love questions, feedback, etc., etc. I've actually got a couple of versions of the canvas printed out physically in AO over there with me if you want to knock me on the shoulder later and have a look at a map. Grab a copy of the canvas in Miro. Go back to work and think about how you could potentially map out part of your business ecosystem. So you don't have to do your entire business. You can start with a user segment, a product, a business unit, for example. And I love seeing maps when people create maps. So if you do create a map, post it on LinkedIn or send it through to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. 5 minutes ago, perfect timing. Happy to answer any questions as well if you do create a map and get stuck and not sure what to do with it. So that is the end of my talk. So 5 minutes left, perfect timing for questions. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Luke, for wonderful talk, and definitely like more complex than I thought, which is really good. I would love to deep dive into. So my question is like, if you are into the B2C value pyramid, like, is there a way that you can quantify things? Like you can add value so that you could see that, okay, how much impact would it have, kind of like adding values to each of these terms? Like as for example, like of uplift, for example, or revenue, like can you quantify those things as well? Like, is there a way that we can do it?
So measuring each of these.
Yeah. Because I would love to use this pyramid, but like sometimes like our bosses would love to see the numbers and the value of impact of each of these like pyramid.
Some of them I can see are pretty straightforward. So like saves time, for example, we can do, I don't know, it could be from a user's perspective. It could be an onboarding sequence. It could be a, I don't know, it could be uploading something or verifying something. It happens quicker. What else? Makes money is a simple one to measure. Risk reduction. That's a good question. So how would we measure each of these different 40 elements? I'm going to take that away and think about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Thank you.
How do you go from divergent thinking to create an action to like change, to create change? Or is that like another team or another?
So my thoughts are that we should be small, self-contained teams that have direct customer connection. So these experiments would be run by the team themselves. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, when you go from, you've created 10 to 20 to 50 ideas, and then you got to start putting the wheels in motion.
I mean,
knowing which is best, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, I suppose we probably put our walk back into our usual UX or design thinking methodology. So we test them. If they don't work, we abandon them. If they do work, we amplify them potentially. I mean, these have just become part of every team's backlog once we've kind of worked out what it is that we're going to do with. So what if or how might we provide better access to X, Y, Z? That's not going to be the solution to how we actually build out better access. It's probably sorry, I've lost my train of thought a little bit. Yeah, I mean, these are just things that need to be done, or just like any other feature, I suppose. If that answers the question, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you back to your usual prioritization techniques. I wouldn't use anything different for these ones. Anyone else?
So this will be the last
Yeah.
one.
Which one would be your preferred framework if we were to apply these values into our ways of working, like from HCD perspective,
From a which perspective?
like from HCD or UX perspective?
Well, I suppose the reason I've started playing with the different currencies is because they have different different purposes. So the authors actually asked me, do you think we've missed out on any currencies in these 8 currencies?
I don't think, yeah.
And I don't think they have from a digital business ecosystem perspective, but then from the eyes of the customer, customers don't see value like that, right? This is how customers see value. So that's why I started using those elements on top of the map to provide that extra level of sort of fidelity and yeah.
Okay, I think that concludes this session. Thank you so much, everyone who
Thanks for coming, everyone.